There it is. Okay, hi guys. Welcome
Hello.
to Project Access Oxbridge interview webinar. Want to introduce ourselves?
My name is Aren and Li Chen. I'm from Armenia. I'm a first year here, undergraduate. I'm studying engineering science, and I'm also the head of Armenia in Project Access. And we'll talk a little bit about Project Access later.
Hmm.
And Li?
Right. So I'm Li Chen. I'm a second year archaeology and anthropology student here at Oxford. I'm from Singapore, and I'm a director of engagement at Project Access. So just briefly about Project Access, right? Since that's what we're kind of here for. Well, so the kind of three things that Project Access is doing. The first thing is to really tap into these, current students here at Oxford. Who, a lot of them have a quite, burning desire to kind of help people from their own countries come to universities like Oxford and other top universities to make them come and use the resources, use the teaching, etc. Secondly, we're also very aware that there's kind of this asymmetrical information, right? That it's kind of the process is quite complex of
Yeah.
applying, but it's something that once you kind of know, you know. But before you know it, before you go for an interview, before you take the test, you have to like kind of learn it for like hours and hours and hours. But these are things that mentors know on the back of their hands.
Yeah, so all the mentors in Project Access and including ourselves, we went through all this process, which can really be tiring, boring. But once you, but before interviews and if you and that process, if you connect to right people, if you get the advice, it may be easier. So that's why Project Access has been created, and our main aim is help like people from all over the world to have the same equal level of information before interviews and to help them as much as we can. So today is the great opportunity for you to ask questions about Oxbridge interviews, what you should expect, what you should do and not do. So feel free to post comments under the video, and we will be happy to answer them.
Right. Sounds really good.
So let's start.
Yeah. I think we can start off by just talking about our own interview
Yeah.
experiences. You want to go first, Aaron?
Yeah. So I did a Skype interview because I did firstly I did IB International Baccalaureate in Armenia, so I was in middle of my studies, so I couldn't like come to Oxford for interview. So I did Skype interview, which really you should not be afraid of, or it gives you like it gives you the equal opportunities that if you had come here. So like it was a normal interview. So few things before Skype interview, just make sure you know where the interview will be held. For example, you'll have to go to school, but Oxford will inform you about it. So make sure you have good internet connection, and basically that's just it. Just have a pen and paper under your hand, and so that's it. So what for my interview, they didn't actually want me to write stuff down to show them or to find some specific like values to some problems, like like numeric answers. They just want me they just wanted to see how I think, how I approach to some engineering problems. Like they gave me a problem and saw how I would find solutions, what equations I write. Basically, for engineering, you take the PAT exam, so they already know how you can do algebra, what math skills you have. So for my case, the interview was just basically seeing how I think, whether I will be able, whether I will be able to study here or not. So it was um, it was like much less. Um, um, it was much easier for me than PAT, because in PAT your test you had to write. So don't worry if you have got to this stage. That's great.
Right.
Just go to interview with confidence, and the worst thing you can do is panic.
Right. So, I mean, one thing we're trying to do here is that, Aaron studies a science subject. Mine is kind of like a hybrid between like arts and humanities, but we kind of want to give you both perspectives. So, other questions that we had in our type form here about PPE, maths and stuff like that. we're going to answer them based on what we know. But the basic idea here is that you feel free to ask kind of like subject-specific questions, because having gone through these two different kinds of interviews, we should have a rough idea of what you kind of can't do. So my own interview experience, right? I interviewed back in 2013, so that's a while ago. I flew out here. I was quite jet lagged. I thought I bombed my first interview because the guy was he was like really like strict, as in, obviously he's a really great guy and I know him well now, but the point being that they would constantly ask you questions like why, kind of to understand your thinking. But if you weren't really familiar with this approach, you might feel like they're saying you're doing something wrong, or you're not, you don't have the right answers. But actually sometimes they're just really looking for how you think. So I went back, I moped in my room for a bit, then I gathered some confidence to go for my second interview, where I thought I did really well, because I felt, instead of feeling very, very like prepared, I felt like I was, I had less to lose. I was a bit sharper, a bit more flexible, a bit on my feet. So that was good. And afterwards, just went back and waited for a while, and they said, no more interviews. And I just went back home, and I waited for 1 month, and suddenly they told me I was in. So it's quite a strange process, but it's relatively enjoyable.
So, what are your questions?
Right. So yeah, let's jump in straight to questions that you guys have submitted to us online. So first we have a question from Jennifer from Germany asking, what is the purpose of the interview?
Okay, so I'll start. So I have been in Oxford for about already 2 months, and I've also gone through the process of interview. So I already am pretty convinced that the main purpose of the interview is for the tutors to make sure that the person who will come to Oxford will be able to learn a bunch of new stuff. Because when you are here, you are just bombarded with a lot of information very quickly, because the terms here are much shorter. So for me, I have, from my experience, that's the main purpose of the interview. So so you have to convince the tutor that you already have some background, and that when they ask you questions, the questions that they won't be from stuff that you already know. Some of the parts will be completely new, and they did it on purpose, so they can test how you would respond to new stuff, how you think about new stuff. So they don't expect you to answer completely, give a final answer to their question. They expect you to see how you think, and and to show them your thinking. You don't have to think in your mind or shut up during the interview. Just talk as much as you can, and tell them what you are thinking as much as possible.
Right. And as to I completely agree as to what the kind of the purpose of the interview is.
Yeah.
If you think about the interview as kind of it's kind of the easiest and kind of most appropriate way for tutors to very quickly know if you're right for the course or not. So if they kind of read an essay that you write, they might know that they know you're smart. Everyone who's invited to interview is very smart. They know that you can do things rigorously. But the point being that with the kind of the pace of the term, the way that things are taught, they want to kind of know that you're a student who will be there for 3 years and be engaged, or 3 or 4 years, be engaged, be kind of analytical, and you have a potential to grow, the potential to take on new knowledge and respond to new ideas. So if you think about it from that sense, I think it's kind of less scary, because they're not really evaluating you in a very this guy is I give this guy 8 points and this guy is 9 points, so I'm going to take 9 points guy. It's really a very kind of intuitive thing, and very much about person-to-person connection. So moves on easily to what interviewers are looking for, which I think comes on quite naturally. They're looking for kind of, once you get to Oxford, if you've gotten an offer, you're already an Oxford student, because you're kind of the right kind of person, right? Mm-hmm. You think about the way that work happens here. It's very much the interview is actually a very good process to kind of find the people who match the system.
Yeah, exactly. So I basically just talked earlier what they look for. Want to move to the other question? Yeah.
Right.
What is the structure of the interview?
So what is the structure? Oh, by the way, please leave us some questions in the comments.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, if you're watching live, you should have the benefit of being able to get your questions answered. So what is the structure of the interview?
So the structure is, so in my case, it really depends from college to college and so course to course. In my case, they didn't ask any questions from my personal statement. They just asked one question, like, why did you choose engineering? Why engineering and not physics, for example? So just that one small question, and they then just passed to problems. And like in my case, problems from electricity, I think, mechanics, just random questions. There wasn't so much of a structure. Because I did Skype interview, maybe it was a little bit different, I think, but um, that's what I can say from my experience. So they just tell you problems, and that's it.
Right. I think, I mean, that sounds about right. In terms of like the actual interview itself, I think too there's no strict structure that the university gives them to follow. It's very much a free and easy conversation.
And it really depends on tutors.
Exactly.
Because there are different people, they prefer different methods.
Right, so for some subjects you might get a specific, like they give you a piece of paper, you have to read a paragraph or do a certain problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's usually based on what the tutor thinks will reveal most about you. But also the thing is that because the interviews are kind of like flexible, the things that you say are going to be things they ask you about. Like not necessarily your personal statement, because whether or not they've gone about they've read it recently is another question. But they kind of want to engage you on the spot. So let's say you keep talking about like you're very interested in like democratic principles, right? They're naturally going to start asking you and grilling you on democratic principles. If you think about it, that's a good thing because they won't start asking you things that you obviously have no idea about, even though you might have an interest in learning. So in terms of on another level, structure of the interview, in terms of how many interviews you had. Did you have just one interview, or did you have like a few different interviews?
I had just one interview for one college, but I think I'm not sure. But you can for Skype interviews, you can also have, if you ask, you can have more than one.
Oh right,
I'm not
right.
sure, but I had just one.
So for my subject specifically, we had 2 interviews because one for archaeology and one for anthropology. So there'll be another question on this later that someone has submitted, but the basic idea is that you're not going to have a big like combined interview, maybe in some subjects, but that you have to look up for the very specific subject. But if you are studying a kind of like a joint honors paper, you will have different kinds of interviews asking you about your different areas of knowledge.
And one more thing I forgot to say: if you are doing a Skype interview, make sure you have a printer because like they may ask you to print some stuff, and that's really important because you don't have like much time.
Right.
Let's go to next question. Jin Tao from Singapore. Like what is crucial to know for the Skype interview? So I basically just and also be on time. So for my case, like I was there, but there was a little bit confusion whether I should call them or they should call me. So they thought I didn't come to interview and they wanted to go to other applicant, and then somehow I managed to contact each other. So like arrange it on time. Make sure you know what you have to do, and just be confident.
And did you do anything to kind of like psych yourself up because you're like sitting in your own room or sitting in a school somewhere?
Yeah, I was in school. Yeah, right. I had to go to school. So
I guess just going to school itself, you felt a bit more like, oh, this is the day I'm going for my interview.
Yeah,
a bit more.
But it's like you have to like explain to yourself that it's not like to be calm, not to like panic. So I think I was able to do that. So I was just calm. So that's what my tutors always tell me, that the worst thing you can do is panic. Yeah. So just be calm, be confident, and hopefully everything will.
And I guess one other thing to note here is that for Cambridge, they do have a slightly different interview pattern.
Yeah.
I think for overseas, they will send a tutor from like one subject to go to a region, like let's say Southeast Asia, and like let's say maybe a chemistry tutor, and you'll interview like kind of all sorts of different subjects there.
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So in my case, a week before, 2 weeks before, like we had to like with Skype show that how the school is like, so that there are like enough arrangements available for Skype interview, but no tutor came to our school. It really depends.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just one more thing. So,
Oops. Just
yeah.
checking for questions.
Yeah, so I also did a Skype interview with Imperial College London. So what they did is they just sent pictures in Skype. So that's also a possibility. Be expect that. So you'll not always have to print stuff. So and most importantly, have paper and pen with you.
So I guess that's a really good segue into the next question, which is just how do you prepare for the interview?
Yeah.
And oh, actually, I think we have two more questions above. Maybe we should just cover that briefly, just about the structure of the interview itself. We have this question from Claudia from Poland saying, what should I do during an interview if I have no idea what to say, when a tutor asks me a question? Well, the first thing is that, sometimes they're asking you questions they know you can't really answer. They kind of want to see your thinking. They want to see how you think. And also, they know you've prepared for an interview. They know that, let's say you're studying history, they know you've read some like basic history text to get a grounding in what the subject is all about. They kind of want to see you take this knowledge and apply it to something new. So they might drill you a bit, but the best thing you can do is to not just don't sit there for like 5 minutes and not say anything. Just kind of work it through in your head. Kind of tell them, oh, I'm thinking like this, but I'm thinking maybe this is a dead end. Maybe this is not so good. These are things that are actually very valuable for them to hear.
As I said, they don't expect you to know answers to everything, but what they expect is to see your thinking. So you'll not know the answers to everything. So you just, as Lee said, just like tell them how you are thinking, how you would solve this, and as I said, what is preventing you to solve that, and they'll help you out, give you hints, and it'll work out.
And I think one question from Nicole from Singapore, what kinds of questions should you ask the interviewers at the end of the interview? Firstly, don't waste their time because they're very busy. Like if it's a question that you know the answer to, I mean that you can find on their website or like a deadline or something, don't ask them. But so one question I did ask my tutor was that because my course actually involves a mandatory field work, which I just did actually in China over the summer. So back then, obviously, I didn't know anything about fieldwork. So I knew the requirements, but I kind of wanted to know what would sound like fieldwork projects people had did. And I asked my tutor during the interview, and he was really happy to tell me, people have worked at museums, they've gone to Greece, they've gone to France, etc.
Yeah.
So these are things that that kind of show you what life is like in the course. I guess is what you're really interested in knowing.
I personally didn't ask any questions. I guess it really depends.
Yeah.
Ask what you are interested in, but as Lee said, just don't waste their time. Just do it quickly. That's it. I'll go to last two questions.
Right. Oh, sorry. I think we were here. Practicing for the interview is kind of like the big one.
Yeah. So again, it really depends from college to college. For example, a lot of colleges, when you go to college websites, to your specific course website, they provide you with books or like publications you can read. So you can do that, but if you don't, like, it won't hurt you much. So for science subject, I don't know, for humanities, so I just like I prepared for PAT really hard, so that preparation for that exam like really helped me for interview. So I didn't do that much for interview. I just spent that month relaxing and like reading a whole book or doing a lot of questions before interview will not help you at all. Just revise a little bit, quickly go over your books, but not like cram or do hard reading. So if you want, just go check your colleges, your course website. There should be some books there.
So I mean, I think that does really kind of apply across the board. I mean, most subjects there'll be like some key books that you can read to kind of get a grounding. And obviously, a really good thing to do is to kind of do a mock interview. So obviously, one thing we do in Project Access that you can try, if you have a mentor, you can try and arrange a mock interview with them. But even if you don't know anyone in Oxbridge or who has done the interview before who can help you out, I think a very good thing to do is just kind of like talk with your parents or friends about your subject, kind of get them to ask you questions. And the reason why you want to do this is because in many ways it's kind of not enough for you to just know it on paper, but you need to be able to express yourself and communicate your ideas clearly. So you kind of want this just this practice, so that when the tutor asks you, like, oh, why are you interested in theology, for example, you can instantly say, oh, blah 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 blah. That's why I'm interested in theology.
I guess for humanities it's much more.
This is true.
Yeah. There's next question. Samples of possible questions that can be asked.
So yeah, I put that there because someone asked about samples of possible questions. I think if you look at Oxford's website, they've just released a whole bunch of questions for different subjects.
For like if you go to my website now, I think you can see a picture of how you can construct a dam to prevent water from falling or something. Yeah, that's kind of an engineering type question. Yeah, for me they asked about bungee jumping, like when you jump from a bridge. They asked me what equations you would write, like the equations of energy conservation and stuff. So they generally give you a situation and want you to tell you what you can do as a scientist, what you can say about it, how you can control the movement and stuff. So yeah, like the dam question, as I said, for engineering. I try to remember. I think.
I guess for the art side, right, if there's something that's always been in the news, for example, Brexit or like Trump's election, they are going to ask you about it. Or even if they're not asking you about it, it's good for you to talk about it to show that you are critically engaged, right? So, I mean, they're not going to ask you something like, they're not going to be like, oh, have you heard of this like 14th century political theorist who wrote this, explain it immediately. That's not the kind of knowledge they're looking for.
Yeah, so move to other question.
Yeah, let's go to 5. It's a science question.
Yeah, it's how do I prepare for an interview, and is there any material that one can access in order to get a better understanding of typical engineering interview question? So, as I said, like material that you can access is on your college, if there is any, in college, a website in your course section. Like I did a lot of just search the web, find some questions there. We also have project access knowledge base, right?
Right.
There are some questions there. You can just also look at there. For engineering particularly, as I mentioned, you will have that dam type questions, or so I'll talk particularly about engineering. So what they look for is how you can apply your physics knowledge and math knowledge to particular situations. So they will ask you that kind of questions. Just basically, there is no one place where all the questions are there, and people will say that they have list of all questions. It's not basically true. So just read some questions in your books, do some research in the internet, and don't worry too much about it, because anyway you're not going to know what kind of questions they ask. So generally, as I said, you'll get for engineering questions that apply in real world, how you can apply science and your knowledge of science in real world. That's for engineering.
Right. Sounds really good. Should we do an arts question now? Christopher from Denmark. I have been wondering whether one should refer to authors or theorists when making a point from their work, or whether you should present it as your own idea. So in other words, should you cite an author, Foucault, Latour, whatever? Should you cite them when you're saying their ideas? My feeling is that firstly, you should definitely not pretend that you thought of the idea, because that's a bit, there's no reason to do that. I guess the worry here, I imagine the applicants feel, is that they're worried that by citing it sounds too much like you're just just recalling the ideas without really engaging with it. So there's no real easy way to do it. It is kind of truly an awkward situation. By the time you get to first year, second year in your tutorials, you'll be very ready to talk about them, because you feel like you're a person who has read them. You're like a university student. You can talk about these things. But as a high school student, I can understand why you might feel apprehensive about just citing people. So my advice is to kind of do something where you try and critically engage with it. So you can say, oh yeah, say in a very genuine way, like I remember reading, this article by this person, right? And I felt and say blah 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 blah, and my own thoughts were this that, and this is why I thought it was good, this is why I thought it was bad. So in other words, just show that you're reflecting, show that you're not going there to say things that are not relevant to the question, but that only use these citations when something is genuinely relevant. So just as an example, let's say if you wanted to talk about let's say you want to talk about the Protestant work ethic, right? Instead of just immediately going to explaining what it is, point 1, point 2, point 3. There's kind of things they already know. Maybe there's a situation where it's good to talk about it, like you're just talking about, oh, why do you think people work in certain ways in societies nowadays? Then you can say, oh, there's this really interesting idea, and it's relevant to this in this ways. It's just something like that. Yeah.
Go to the other one. So, problem sheets or conversation. How are these balanced for different subjects?
So I think they're saying how much of it is through problem sheets and how much of it is through like just talking to your tutor.
So I guess it's like a combination of those two, because you explain them your solution by talking to them. So they'll give you a problem. You're not going to like write it for your own and then show them your solution. You're going to explain them by conversation each step of your problem and how you solved it. So that's it. You always have to keep the conversation.
So there are two questions just here about one of them says, do they ask about your personal statement?
Yeah, no, they didn't. For Michael, they didn't ask anything. No, they just one question, why you chose engineering. That was the only question that was not related to engineering questions. So they may still ask. It really differs from university to university, college to college.
I suppose if you say something very controversial in your personal statement, you must be ready to back it up. Yeah. But so one thing is that like you, my tutors didn't really ask for my personal statement, and towards the end they were like, "Is there anything about you that you want us to know?" Before the interview ends, and I was like, "Oh, better talk about I started saying like something about my personal statement that I thought was relevant to me, and they were like, "Yeah, we already know," because they read my personal statement. So some tutors might view the personal statement as kind of like additional information, and they want to use the interview to really get new information out of you. So in other words, you don't have to they're not going to test you on your personal statement. Just know that what you wrote. You don't have to really go into great detail.
I think it's more important for humanities than for. I'm not sure.
You're probably right.
Yeah, well, that's what I think.
And a second question is not really about the Oxbridge interview specifically, but since I have an answer to this, which is whether or not Oxbridge recognizes the Polytechnic Diploma from Singapore. Cambridge definitely recognizes it, because I know a good number of poly students who are in Cambridge and doing very well, and they all I think they had some I think they did have to translate their grades or something like that. But what I would advise you to do is either sign up for a mentor or talk to our guys at Project Access, the new head of Singapore. He's a lawyer at Cambridge who studied at Ngee Polytechnic, so he will have a lot of answers on how you can do this. Move on?
Yeah. So, let's go. There's Art's question. Proposal what books benefit reading.
Right, so books that you would benefit reading, right, before attending interviews.
Yeah.
So I guess this ties in with the theme that we always say like general stuff. So obviously it's subject dependent, and the first thing to say is that if there are any big books in your subject, any general stuff, make sure you know it. I think for the arts, a really good thing to have is have an idea of kind of the theoretical history of your subject. What are some different schools of thoughts? How have people's ideas and the way they frame questions changed over time? This is really valuable, and it shows that you're not just seeing the subject as kind of one static layer of knowledge that it's kind of doesn't really change. If you're studying social sciences, I specifically recommend reading about changes in social theory, functionalism, structuralism, post-structuralism, whatever. Just make sure you know I mean, not make sure you know, but just it's good to be familiar with how things change. If you really want to deep delve, I recommend reading either Bourdieu or Giddens. These are like, or on the other hand, you can read like material agency stuff like Latour. These are just really at the what is really important and very extensively cited in today's disciplines. It's just even if you don't read it, then don't worry about it. You have a chance to read it during your course.
So, any examples of challenging science questions? So, I already brought you some. I can't really recall, like, I just remember the bungee jumping question. And, like, what they asked me. Yeah, like, they're not they were not, like, very challenging, I would say. So, they'll ask, like, how maybe, for example, they may ask how the brake system in car works. So again, so you shouldn't know this. You, of course, what they want from you is to think. So it is new stuff. You may be encountered with this question for the first time, but you may think but you have to explain them how you think it works, what like makes the car stop, where the energy goes to. So like I'll not say that questions will be challenging. They will just be new. And again, we're repeating ourselves. Just keep telling them to keep speaking out what you think. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
We have an arts question here from Zainab from Pakistan saying, well, in the context of PPE, you know, each tutor is a specialist in either politics, economics, or philosophy. He's basically asking if you should combine these ideas. The main answer is that firstly, the interviews are likely to be separate. A lot of subjects with joint honors, you get, for example, for me, you get one archaeology interview, one anthropology interview, and they will kind of only ask you about archaeology and kind of only about anthropology. But that being said, there's a reason why these subjects are put together. You don't be surprised if they ask you a question, you know, like in what ways do you think politics and philosophy are related? And the second point to be made is that, I mean, obviously these subjects are very well related. Something like politics and economics, they have a very strong philosophical grounding. You can't really get past that. Something like economics is obviously very political, philosophy is very political, etc. So it's kind of likely that you end up getting those areas in your conversations and your tutors might ask you more about them. But there won't be any kind of like unnatural need to like bridge things or make connections when they're not there. Nor will tutors be like, oh, can you... They won't fault you for not making a connection unless they're kind of really hinting at it or kind of really asking you about it. So I think we have a 3-part question here from Charlotte from Singapore.
Yeah. How much detail do the interviewers go in regarding your personal statement?
Oh, so I think we talked about this.
Yeah.
So
secondly, roughly, how is the ratio of the question split? For instance, what proportion of the questions is on your personal statement and what proportion is on as I said, that was just one question for my personal statement, and the other questions were just engineering problems for me. For subjects like mathematics and so on, would you be allowed to do same rough workings, or do you have mentally think through the problem? Yeah, we already talked about this for mathematics, engineering, and sciences. For me, for example, they didn't even want me to write them down, and for other like colleges or for Cambridge, for example, they may want you to write them down, but they don't want just your rough working, and they don't want you to get the right answer. They want you to see how you think.
So if you have any like last questions, please put them in the comment box immediately, and we'll answer them in the next 5 minutes. But for now, let's kind of start wrapping up. Do you have any kind of like top tips or maybe anything we haven't talked about today that might be good to know for the interview?
Yeah, I'll just say that the best you can do is just keep calm, be confident, don't try to memorize lots of stuff before interview, don't panic, and just go to interview, let anything that's gonna happen, and be yourself. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I mean, I think as we said right at the start of this webinar, the main thing that they're looking for is like a human being that they can impart knowledge to, who they can talk to, have discussions and debate with. So they're not looking for two things. They're not looking for some kind of machine of knowledge who just like knows everything by rote learning. There's not really that kind of person won't really do well in Oxford. Secondly, they're also not looking for someone who's incredibly smart but a bit timid with expressing their ideas. They're looking for someone who can kind of talk things through. The good thing to know is that if you do feel a bit like timid or intimidated by this process, is that firstly, you can kind of get past it by practicing talking about it. Secondly, know that tutors are kind of not there to kill you. Like most of the tutors they are very friendly, and they know that interviews are very kind of scary processes. They try and make you comfortable, which is why when you go to many interviews, they kind of open it with some small talk, saying, how have you been, how's Oxford been, etc. So the point being that when tutors, they do this every year. This is not like some some dark ritual that they perform, like super exclusive and very very difficult. It's kind of something that's part of their life cycle. Every year they look for new students. Every year they go through interviews, and I think if you follow these tips and you're engaged with the subject, there's no reason why you can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll do a last call, but I think that about wraps it up. Yep.
So thank you for being with us.
Do check out the Project Access website for more information.
There's lots of useful information on Project Access website. Check it out.
Yeah, and if you already have an interview and you want a mock interview, and just sign up and give us the comment. We'll try and match you up very quickly. We know that it's very useful to have a mock interview, and obviously interviews are coming up in 1 week to like 3 weeks time. We're more than happy to help you.